In February and March of 2026, I'll be back on the road in Hull, Gateshead, Derby, and in Colchester. 2026 is when they want to cross the line as fast as they can into an AI-controlled humanity. We stand up now or we regret it forever. That's 4 dates, and you can get the tickets in the link below. Hello, I've just recorded an edition of a show I do for Iconic.com called Legacy, in which I look at the content of my books over what is now coming into my 36th year of researching this, and relate what I've said over the years to what is happening today. And that's appropriate because in these books and many others that I've written is the concept of what I dubbed in the 1990s problem, reaction, solution. And it's also become known as a false flag. This is when you create a situation in which it could be a war, it could be a terrorist attack, could be a banking collapse, could be anything. But you create a problem and you then tell the public the version of that problem that you want them to believe, because you want that reaction from the public of outrage, of fear, of something must be done. This can't go on. What are they going to do about it? And then you, who have covertly created the problem, got that reaction, do something, you then openly offer the solutions to the problems you have covertly created. Now, the events, the horrific events of 9/11 are a wonderful example of problem, reaction, solution at work, where you have an attack on New York and Washington, and you blame Arab terrorists for it, and you say that it was orchestrated by Osama bin Laden, who is being protected by the Taliban in Afghanistan. And so you say, well, that's the problem. The reaction, understandable reaction, 9/11, do something. You then offer the solution, which was the invasion of Afghanistan, followed by the invasions of other Middle Eastern countries. And I say this now in response to what has happened in Bondi Beach. You know, one of the hardest things to get across to people over the years has been that just because people claim to be representatives of a certain group of people, it doesn't mean they are. I've exposed and exposed and exposed a global network I call the global cult, which is driving the world to ever greater dystopia, not least through digital AI means currently. And this global cult operates through governments right across the world. It operates through intelligence agencies. It operates through military. And just because someone may be a prime minister or a president of this country or that country does not mean that they are representing the people of that country or have their best interests at heart. You've only got to look through what we call history to see the actions of governments, prime ministers, presidents, and so on, and how they have used their own populations. They have killed and maimed and made their own populations suffer while claiming to represent them. Because they don't represent those people. They represent this global cult and its interests. And one of the centers of this global cult's operations, along with, yes, of course, the United States and Europe and Britain and other countries around the world, but one of the major centers is Israel. It was created in 1948 for that specific reason. And to understand the way those that claim to be representing Jewish people operate is to understand that this leadership, this network, is representing not Jewish people, it's representing this global cult. And thus it is quite happy to see Jewish people suffer and die for reasons of ensuring, not least through problem, reaction, solution, that its demands on how society must change are invoked and imposed. Now, we have seen from the way the Israeli government has perpetrated the mass, unspeakable, unimaginable trauma of slaughter, death, and destruction in Gaza since October the 7th. Many times before that, but let's pick it up on October the 7th. We've seen that the leadership in Israel has no problem in its psychopathy and its evil to impose that unimaginable death, destruction, slaughter on men, women, and so many children in Gaza. So, to do that, you need to be not just a psychopath, you need to be a super psychopath. And the top two traits of psychopaths, never mind super ones, is a complete lack and deletion of empathy, which I describe as the fail-safe mechanism of human behavior, because if you have empathy, if you can put yourself in the feelings of those you're affecting, it impacts upon what you will do to them. If you have no empathy, then it doesn't matter what you do to them, because you will have no emotional consequence. And the other major trait of a psychopath, there are many, is you have a deletion of compassion, which kind of relates to the same thing. Now, we have game, set, and match, the evidence that those that control Israel have a super psychopathic nature and a complete deletion of empathy and compassion. Otherwise, they would not do what they have done in Gaza. So the next question must be, but they obviously have compassion and empathy for their fellow Jewish people because they represent them. Oh, really? Do they really? Does someone of that level of psychopathy have the ability to turn it on and off? Or does it see all of humanity, no matter what its background, religious, political, or cultural belief, does it see them all as mere fodder to be used and abused at will to ensure that their goals are played out? Well, let's ask that question about October the 7th. We have the Gaza border fence as the most defended border fence in the world, on planet Earth. Talk to former members of the Israeli Defense Forces, and they will tell you that you have sensors on those fences so sensitive that if a cockroach or a bird comes close, they will know about it. Okay. There's supposed to be troops all around, constantly guarding any possible breach. And yet, on October the 7th, Hamas, and there's a lot to know about that organization and how it was funded into existence by the Israeli government, Hamas operatives breached that fence in multiple places, and along with the so-called friendly fire of the Israeli Defense Forces, eventually all those Jewish people were killed and injured. I remember watching a video by Charlie Kirk, in which even he, a big supporter of Israel over the years, asked the question, how come Hamas were allowed to breach the border fence? As he put it, he'd flown in a helicopter from Jerusalem to the Gaza border in 45 minutes, and yet, after Hamas breached the border fence, there is this long period of no response from Israeli troops, the Israeli army. Why? Question Kirk asked. Was it Was there a stand down? I remember him asking. Well, members of the Israeli Defense Forces have had the guts to come out since and say, yes, there was a stand down. That allowed Hamas to breach the fence and do what it did. And take the hostages. Why would anyone do that? Why would you allow a, quote, terrorist organization to breach the border fence and do that to Jewish people within the land we call Israel, or calls itself Israel anyway? Why? Why would you do that? But wait. As I've said so many times over the years, don't listen to the words, look at the outcome. So what was the outcome of what happened that day? It was used, problem, reaction, solution. It was used as the excuse by Netanyahu, a cult operative to his fingertips, to justify the said mass slaughter and destruction of Gaza. To the point where they are now talking about what the plan was all along, to completely take over that land and to eventually expel the Palestinians to other lands. Oh, it's just a war zone. It's just rubble now, says Israel-owned Donald Trump of Gaza. They can't possibly live there. All this has got to happen. We've got to rebuild it and all that stuff. Yeah, exactly as planned. And so, from this perspective, you look at what happened on October the 7th from a completely different standpoint, a different perception of why it was allowed, and it was absolutely allowed to happen. But in the doing it, in terms of what followed, Israel's global image went through near destruction. You had the Christian Zionists who believe the Old Testament about God saying Israel is the promised land and the Jewish people are the chosen people. But even a lot of them were starting to say, in the face of the horrors, the daily horrors coming out of Gaza, no, enough's enough. This can't be justified. And so Israel, having done, and I'm talking about the Israeli government, having done what it wanted to do and believed it had to do, which is destroy Gaza, it had lost the global audience. Had to get it back. So, in recent days and weeks, it's been revealed how the Israeli government and its Mossad military network has been putting together a vast sum of money to spend on influencing the global perception of Israel and restore support for its agenda. Not least the money that goes to American politicians on a scale that, beggars belief, and goes to so-called alternative influencers, while people like Larry Ellison, so-called second richest man in the world, the biggest private funder of the Israeli Defense Forces, is now bought CBS News, wants to buy CNN. All this is connected to controlling the narrative and selling Israel's image back to how it used to be. And then, one shocking day, Muslims, 2 of them, start mass killing Jews on Bondi Beach in Australia. As a result of that, Netanyahu immediately hits the airwaves, he always does. He says a Jewish man disarmed one of the Muslim gunmen, when actually it was a Muslim who disarmed him. But he says, no, it's a Jewish man, which he's had to retract. And so it begins. As predictable as night following day, the calls for a crackdown on anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism that is equated with criticizing Israel and Zionism. There is always the question, whenever these horrors happen, who benefits? Has the Muslim world benefited from what happened at Bondi Beach? No, quite the opposite. Collectively, all fingers are pointing in their directions. Have Australians benefited? No, of course not. Have the Jewish people who died and were injured benefited? Of course not. But if we go back to what I said earlier about psychopaths not caring less about their alleged own any more than they care less about anyone else, they don't have to benefit because they don't matter to these people. one group of people alone have benefited from what happened at Bondi Beach. Anyone that wants to use that horror to justify global censorship of exposure and criticism of the Israeli government and its intelligence military networks. And we're seeing it. We were seeing it within hours. Condemnation by Netanyahu of those countries that recognize Palestine as a nation, as a state, castigating them for being responsible for this horror. Now, as I speak, of course, there is a hell of a lot more research to do to get to the bottom of exactly what happened and how. But all the elements of what I've described in my books over the years as problem, reaction, solution are there to be seen. And I would add this too. From the mid-1990s, right across the millennium and onwards, I made it my business to study mind control. And I'm not saying, oh, this is an explanation of what happened in Bondi Beach. I'm saying that whenever these events happen, we need to put that in the mix as a possibility, as a consideration, as part of the research. Because the techniques of mind control they have today could make anyone go crazy with a gun, kill grotesque numbers of people, and even have no idea that they were mind controlled to do it, even believing that they made the decisions to do it. Talk about Manchurian candidates. My goodness. Yes, Manchurian candidates exist, but today the techniques of mind control are vastly, vastly superior to anything that went before. So I would say, before coming to conclusions about what happened, ask the question who benefits and consider how many elements of a classic problem, reaction, solution, a false flag, there are. And crucial to considering that and reaching the conclusions of what we believe happened is crucially to know that just because people appear to represent other groups of people, as presidents, prime ministers, whatever, it does not mean that they do. If you want to read more and watch more of my content, then go to the description under the video where you can buy my books. The latest one is The Roadmap, where you can get tickets for public events, and how you can subscribe to a fantastic video channel called Icke, iconic.com.